What's up, guys? We have a blockbuster deal to announce. So, Elias Lindholm is now a member of the Vancouver Canucks. So, you have Kuzmenko, Brzustewicz, Jurmo, 2024 first round pick, conditional 2024 fourth round pick, a part of this deal heading to Calgary. So basically, the biggest name on the trade bait list has now been moved. He was the most desirable center that was available. And right behind him, you had Adam Henrique and Sean Monahan. So now Monahan and Henrique are are tied essentially for the best, centers available. Heading into the 2024 trade deadline, the biggest fish has now been removed off of that list. So, Zach, what are your thoughts essentially of this deal before we do a analysis on it?
Well, this is definitely a huge haul that Calgary are going to be getting, and I guess the general manager should be very satisfied with the return here for Elias Lindholm, who has an expiring contract this summer. Um, they get a player in Kuzmenko who was a 39 goaler, a 39 goal scorer last year, and who's kind of fallen out of favor this year with the coaching staff. His style of play has much to be desired by Rick Tocchet. He's reportedly a lazy player. He's a slow skater, but he is known. Well, I'm going to say known. He's known for his time in the KHL and his rookie season, his late rookie season as an NHLer, as a goal scorer. And if he could revitalize himself in Calgary, they're going to be very happy about that. They get a prospect, the left-sided defenseman a Finnish defenseman in Joni Jurmo, who was a third-round pick in 2020. He's been playing in the Finnish. Here we see it in an SM Liga this season, and for the past couple of years hasn't made his NHL debut yet. He is many to consider a C-level prospect. And if you go back to the trade details, there's some draft picks that are also involved in this deal, as well as another prospect who was a third round pick in Hunter Brzustewicz. So it's a great haul for Calgary. It's the second time these teams strike a deal together this season, with the first being the Zadorov trade. And apparently, you could maybe touch a little bit on this, but there's more to come on the Chris Tanev front. There's been a lot of rumbling on the Twitter boards lately.
Yeah, so in terms of the Chris Tanev, trade piece, he did play with the Vancouver Canucks in the past. Quinn Hughes reportedly went to, the coaching staff and also higher management. So like the general manager, assistant general manager, and president, and inquired, and said, if there's a guy that you should target at the deadline or heading to the deadline, Chris Tanev should be brought back to the Vancouver Canucks. He's a great locker room
Makes a
guy,
lot
great
of sense.
defenseman.
Yeah.
So there was rumors that originally he was gonna be a piece part of this deal, but apparently they're working on a separate deal. But I wouldn't be surprised now that teams look at Vancouver as a threat and say, you know what, if we want Tanev, we have to get him soon because already Lindholm and Zadorov have been traded from Calgary to Vancouver. So now they've established themselves as comfortable trade partners,
Exactly.
and we wouldn't be surprised if we see a third deal happening. And there was rumors about Hoglander potentially being a piece, part of this blockbuster deal or any of the deals that they made with Calgary. So far, they haven't moved him. I think it's wise to keep him, but I wouldn't be surprised maybe a guy like Podkolzin, finds himself out of Vancouver sometime soon. In terms of this prospect here that we're looking at, we don't have much on him, but there was a little report here that he has 69 points, so 61 assists, is tied in the OHL, and also, he's a really exciting young defenseman. So in terms of him as a prospect, he's one of the highlights in the OHL currently. So he's a guy that has a better chance at, making the Calgary Flames in the future. And, this is a team that, already, traded Zadorov, Tanev is on his way out. So they're going to be looking for defensemen. So it makes sense that they acquire a prospect defenseman. And same thing here with Jurmo, another defensive prospect. So they're getting ready to you know um replace some guys in the long run, essentially knowing that they have some trade pieces right now. They traded
Yeah.
Lindholm, they traded Zadorov. Tanev is next. That means Calgary is officially looking to rebuild slash retool. At the moment, they did acquire Kuzmenko, like we were saying. He entered the NHL last year. Everyone was saying that this is the most exciting player from the KHL to the NHL since Artemi Panarin, and it doesn't last long with the Vancouver Canucks, but did have a really good season last year. Almost a 40 goal scorer, 39 goals, 74 points in 81 games. One of the biggest highlights in a very disappointing season last year for the Vancouver Canucks. This year, he just didn't mesh well with Rick Tockett's system, and that's why he finds himself a part of this deal. And he saw himself benched many times, even healthy scratched a couple of times. And I have a statement here from his agent, Dan Milston, um, saying that they've been in discussions with the Calgary Flames since Sunday, and that both the GM and head coach prior to this deal were spoken to, and he's looking forward to being a member of the Calgary Flames. And he supports all the support he's received in this past year and a half from the Vancouver Canucks fan base, and he's always going to call Vancouver home. So in terms of that, Kuzmenko, had to agree to this deal because he had Calgary on his no trade list. So he waived that essentially to make this deal happen. And also, according to Chris Johnson, Elias Lindholm is still in transit from his bye week vacation to the NHL's All Star Weekend in Toronto. So there's no extension worked out with the Vancouver Canucks yet. Um, so no extension in terms of Lindholm, and I think it's a good deal for both teams. Vancouver is essentially going all in this year, and rightfully so because everything's clicking. And last year they didn't have such a great season, but you look at all the guys that are going to the All Star game this year, including their coach. That's that things are going right. And Patrick Alvin also got a extension today, if I'm not mistaken, or yesterday. So like they have all the right pieces moving forward. Even Rutherford, if I'm not mistaken, even got an extension at one point this season. So like they know what they're doing. They have the right people in power right now. They have all the right players in place, and Kuzmenko was the only headache on the team. They get rid of him. They get the biggest piece um, this year at the 2024, trade deadline. But last year they got rid of the biggest piece, which was Bo Horvat. So it's funny how they're on the opposite side this year. How last year they were sellers, now they're buyers.
It's all situational. And to go just to track back to Calgary a little bit, you said, we don't know if they're retooling or they're rebuilding. Well, they added a couple of prospects, and Andrei Kuzmenko is there. Like I said, they're expecting him to get his some of his production back. And the fact that they went after a player like him goes to show that they're still trying to compete this year, because they're right now the record is 22 wins, 22 losses, and 5 losses in overtime. If I'm not mistaken, they're right now they're out of it. They're a handful of points away from the closest teams, being Nashville, and I'm missing another team that is in that wild card race at the
Uh,
moment.
LA, St. Louis, Arizona, all those teams are competing for
Yes,
those two wild card spots.
that's it. They're all within points of each other. And what's fascinating about that is they're trading with Vancouver, who's also in the Pacific Division. I know their seasons have had different trajectories this year, but they're basically like, they're exchanging their quality and each other's amongst each other mid-season while simultaneously competing in the same division. I don't know what kind of relationship these two managers have, but for two general managers on rivaling teams, it kind of seems like they're going out for steak dinner and making these deals happen. Um,
Well, they're both
yeah, you're
two
gonna.
new general managers. Treliving is not there anymore. So, and you have Patrick Alvin. So these are two guys, coming in to their own. First time general managers wanting to make a name for themselves, knowing what they have to do to make their teams better, and if they're like, I have to make a trade with a rival, especially from the same division and another Canadian team, then that's what I'm going to have to do in order to gain the trust of the other people in my management team, also the players, the coaching staff, and most importantly, the fan base. So,
Yeah,
yeah, that's the way I
it's
look at it.
ballsy.
Yeah, and in
It's very
terms of the
it's very
yes,
ballsy. Yeah.
yeah, I totally agree. We're seeing a new NHL now where people don't care if you're a rival. If you have the best offer, you have the best offer, and that's what we're going with. So, in terms of the lineup here of the Vancouver Canucks, you have Pedersen and Miller who are centers. So where does Lindholm fit? If they put him on the third line, that's a complete waste. So what I assume will happen is that Miller will move to the left, the wing, because he is able to play the wing. And
Most likely. Yeah.
people have stated it multiple times that they see him better off as a winger than a centerman. So Lindholm, in my eyes, is going to be on that second line. With Miller and Besser, and Pedersen is gonna stay as the first line center. Kuzmenko will be gone. Maybe Miller does move up to that first line to make it a strong first line. But like, there's a lot of pieces here that could be interchangeable. If I'm not mistaken, they're also dealing with some injuries. Okay, it's only concerning some defensemen, but I don't think Vancouver is necessarily done here. With Lindholm and Pedersen as their first and second line center in the top six. You look at the other centers that they have. You also have Teddy Bluger as a center. You could also include Miller part of their center depth as well. If he wants to play center, Sam Lafferty could play center as well. So like, they're very deep. P.I. Suter could also play center as well. So they're very, very deep in terms of center depth. So some players are gonna have to move to the wings essentially. And Lindholm with Calgary played power play minutes. Um, he's in the top six here. For so many years, he was playing with Goudreau and Kachuk on that first line. Now that whole line is completely gone. It doesn't exist anymore. And that was
Yeah.
just like 2 years ago. And Lindholm's able to play power play, top 6 minutes. If I'm mistaken, even penalty kill minutes too.
Yeah.
So yeah, so he's a player that you could put him in every single situation.
Yeah. Well, what Elias Lindholm is, um, he's he's not as much a play driver, possession guy, distributor, as you'd expect from traditional centermen. He's a guy who's going to put himself in critical areas on the ice and and create high danger scoring chances. He'll be the guy that'll be, the guy who's shooting the puck on net, or the guy who's facilitating a high danger chance. That's the kind of player he is. He does a lot of work um, off the puck like that in the offensive zone. That's kind of his game. Other than that, he's a well-rounded centerman in terms of what he could offer with his two-way game. So like, if you go back to the Vancouver lines here, just to kind of give our own idea of where, which line mates is he gonna mesh with. JT Miller makes a lot of sense putting him there because JT Miller could kind of do everything. I don't know if Brock Besser is the guy who would be on his line because Elias Lindholm, natural scorer, Brock Besser, natural scorer. Um, Brock Besser also would kind of like a shoot first mentality there. So, like, looking at this, Connor Garland could make sense, and maybe you move him up to the top six. I don't know what you think, but I think maybe a line with him and JT Miller on the wing, and Connor Garland could make sense. I don't think. Well, obviously they won't have him with Elias Peterson. Maybe the first line is going to get an addition of the addition of Brock Besser, and Mikheyev comes down. Like, what do you make of all this?
I think that they have one of the best third lines in the league, so I think you should keep it as is. In my opinion, I think if anyone deserves a opportunity in the top six, it's Hoglander. So I would see him making his way to the top six and possibly seeing P.I. Suter moving down back to the fourth line. But again, they have They have so many players that are playing well this season, and they have talented players as well. That
It's so much
everything's
depth.
interchangeable. Players
Hmm.
who could play on the wing, they could play center. Like this is a team that has all the pieces to go very far into the playoffs. They will make the playoffs 100%, especially after this trade. Um, but just taking a look at Jay Fresh's player cards. So Lindholm is a two-way scoring center. He's an off the puck player specializing in getting open for high danger looks rather than spending a lot of time with possession himself. Needs to play with strong passers and puck movers, which makes him the perfect candidate to go and play in Calgary because in Vancouver from Calgary, because that's exactly what they have. They have strong passers in Pedersen. They have good puck movers in JT Miller, and also they have great shooters in Brock Besser. So they have everything there in terms of what we're talking about in terms of their top three forwards in Vancouver, and in terms of Kuzmenko. Middle six scoring winger who has cooled down significantly after shooting 27% as a rookie, still has a decent contributor, although he's one of the slowest skaters in the league. So if you want to put a guy who almost got 40 goals last season in a successful position, you're gonna have to put him in the top six in Calgary. And I know Connor Zary is doing very well, and they have Matt Coronado as well, who are two sought after prospects that have made the jump to the NHL and are going to be fantastic NHL players for the Calgary Flames for years to come, but they're gonna have to put him in the top six somewhere. And the only thing that I'm just by looking at, Lindholm off this team is that their center depth is very weak. Their winger depth is actually surprisingly pretty good. But again, it's not a team that you look at and say, okay, they're gonna make the playoffs. This is a playoff team. I think it's time to tear it down. Huberdeau's contract's gonna be hard to move. Kadri too. But like I think, Sharon Govich, being a part of the mix, being fairly young, part of that Toffoli deal has worked out for them. But if they decide they want to trade him, and rightfully so, because they get a lot of assets for him, they could do that. But as of right now, the next pieces to go are probably Tanev and Hanifin in terms of players that are going to be out. And if that's the case, then you know might as well just start tearing it all apart and just go for a full rebuild instead of a retool, because this team doesn't have the best prospect pool, and two of their best prospects are currently playing on the Calgary Flames. So in my opinion, this is a good trade for both teams, but Calgary still needs to figure out, are they tearing it all down, or they're just like inserting players to replace those that they've traded. Yeah. So those are just
Yeah.
my final thoughts. I don't know if you have anything else to add, Zach, or you're good.
Well, I think Kuzmenko would be ideally on that top line with Huberdeau, as Huberdeau being the setup guy. I think in an ideal scenario with them and kind of the knack that Nazem Kadri has, I think they'd be a good top line that would mesh well together. But we're assuming that Kuzmenko was going back to the similar production that he had last year. So that's the last thing I'll say, just from a hockey perspective. Um, Look, Vancouver are they're getting better. They're pushing. They have a real good chance this year. They have some of the top end players at multiple positions: center, defenseman, goaltending, and Calgary are still trying. It looks like they're keeping everything together, but we'll see how they approach the next couple of moves, like you said.
Perfect. Well, Calgary fans, Vancouver fans, would like to hear your thoughts on this trade breakdown. Uh, did your team win this deal? Did they lose this deal? Did both teams win this deal, or did both teams lose this deal? You never know. You always have those strange comments in the comment section. So we'd like to hear your thoughts, guys. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel if you haven't already, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Young Guys Podcast. And it's looking to be a very exciting 2024 trade deadline. Thank you so much, guys. Until the next one.